So Bernie Sanders went to Alabama today to support the Amazon workers trying to form a union, because in a few days, we're going to know whether their vote succeeded or not, and Bernie is making one final push. And I want to play you two clips. One has Bernie taking on Jeff Bezos, the world's richest man, or one of the world's richest men, and two, Bernie gives the history of the labor movement and how it's still relevant today.
And today I say to Jeff Bezos, who is worth $180 billion, not million, billion, a man who has made tens of billions of dollars in the last year during this pandemic. And what I say to Mr. Bezos, why, when you have so much money, more money that can be spent in a million lifetimes, why are you spending millions trying to defeat an effort on the part of workers here who want nothing more than decent wages, decent benefits, decent working conditions? Over 100 years ago, there were children in Alabama and in Vermont who were working in factories and working in the fields. But working people stood up and said, no, that's wrong. We want kids in schools and not in factories and in fields. Years ago, people worked 50, 60, 70 hours a week with no benefits, and workers came together and demanded that they be treated with respect and dignity, and they formed unions. If history teaches us anything, is that big money interests do not give you anything. You got to stand up and fight for it. And in this, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, dealing with the wealthiest individual in the world, there is no excuse for workers at Amazon not to have good wages, good benefits, and good working conditions. And if you pull this off here, Birmingham, Alabama, if you pull this off here, believe me, workers all over this country are going to be saying, if these people in Alabama could take on the wealthiest guy in the world, we can do it as well. And what we know is if we are interested in expanding a middle class which has been shrinking for decades, the only way to do it is to grow the union movement, and you are in the forefront of that struggle. So I say to you, you may not know it or not, but what you're doing is historical. Historical.
And so you can see in that first clip there, Bernie is basically saying, Jeff Bezos, you're worth almost $200 billion. You are one of the richest people in the history of humanity. Why are you and your corporation spending millions and millions and millions to prevent workers from getting decent pay, decent benefits, decent job security, decent health care, decent health and safety and dignity in the workplace? Why are you doing it? And I think it's part of it is you don't become rich off charity. You don't become rich by being generous. You don't become rich by supporting the working class. You get that rich only through exploitation. And that's the point Bernie is trying to make. No one gets $1 billion, and let alone $180 billion, without exploiting people along the way. And so Jeff Bezos and other people that want to be like him at the corporate echelon of Amazon, they know that they can only preserve this system if working people are divided and lack the solidarity and unity that a union brings and the power a union brings. But it's also not just about the money. A union scares rich people not just because it raises costs for them, not just because wages will go up, health and safety will go up, Healthcare costs might go up. That's part of it. Their profits might have to suffer for their workers to have dignity. But capitalists hate when workers have power. It's not just about the money. If you could convince Jeff Bezos that he can make more money from a union, he might still say no because the union prevents him from the absolute corporate autocracy that exists. So capital will bust unions for money, yes, but also because fundamentally they hate workers' power. They hate democracy in the workplace. And a union is, in a sense, a little slice of democracy within a workplace. And Bernie is also right to note here that this is rooted in history, because you will hear from all sorts of propagandists, saying that, oh, unions were great in the past. I understand why we needed unions back then. I understand why maybe they're needed in the developing world now. But here in America or in Canada or in Western Europe or whatever, we have labor laws and we have regulations and we have competition so workers can be safe without a union. All a union's going to do is take your dues and not give you anything extra. But what Bernie notes is clear, that workers have always had to fight. Whether it was in Alabama or Vermont or anywhere else, children used to have to labor so their families wouldn't starve and they couldn't get educations. They couldn't build opportunity. They couldn't get educated to reach their potential. Often they stunted themselves literally and figuratively to work at 6, 7, 8, 9 years old when they should be playing, learning, socializing. Right? And that only stopped because workers demanded it. Unionized workers, non-unionized workers as well, through their votes, voting for better politicians and those sorts of things. But it was the labor movement, organizing in the workplace and politically, that made that happen. And today, you're not going to get anything better without real deal organizing. You might think that we're better off than we were 100 years ago, and in a lot of ways we are, but inequality is just as deep as it was back then, and working class people are backsliding. Working class people are worse off in many ways than they were 30 or 40 years ago, and that's because unions are weaker. This is an essential fight, 100%. This could be history making. Bernie's not just throwing out platitudes here like a rock star where he always says his favorite concert was his favorite town is in whatever city he's currently in. Bernie is right here that this victory would be massive. It is a predominantly racialized workplace against a corporate elite that is overwhelmingly white. You have a state that is seen as a traditionally anti-union state where a lot of corporations like Amazon move to, maybe escape unions from states like New York and California. And you can't discount the fact that Amazon is one of America's biggest employers, and they really have no union presence anywhere among their hundreds of thousands of workers. If they win this could be history making. This could be the next step of a great labor revolution in the United States. And Bernie Sanders, as always, is in on the ground floor.